Is it hard to be a practicing Catholic and why?
It is to some people, and it's hard for me sometimes because I didn't grow up being a Catholic, so I'm learning about being a Catholic.
Do you think God wants us to practice religion?
Yes, because if he didn't, then there would be no such thing as Christians, Catholics, Jews, and all the other religions. You know me big time is.
Do you think priests should be allowed to get married?
I honestly think they should be able to get married because they should find someone they also love, because God is always telling us how we should love someone, and I feel like they should love someone as well.
Do you think that all the stories in the Bible are true?
Yeah, I think they're all true.
Do you think going to church affects building a relationship with God?
Honestly, I don't think it affects the relationship because my grandpa, he doesn't go to church, but he is religious, so.
Do you think it's hard to be a practicing Catholic and why?
I think it can be very hard because like living in like our society, there's like a lot of controversy. Like whereas if like being a Catholic is like good or bad, or like if we're too strict, I think. But I mean I don't think it's very hard. I mean I think it's pretty good. Like if you follow commandments, if you just do whatever you do in your daily life and just be a good person, you'll be okay.
Do you think God wants us to practice religion?
I believe that God does want us to practice religion because, like, it's like in order to like serve Him, like we need to be going to Mass and like we need to be like involved like in our community. So yeah, I think He does want us to practice religion.
Do you think priests should be allowed to get married?
I think priests should be allowed to get married because I mean like they're human too, and like they deserve like the exact same happiness that I guess everyone else does, and also I think it'll help them a lot when like they're preaching and everything. So I think it's fine for them to get married. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Is it hard to be a practicing Catholic? Why?
I don't think it's hard. Not here, at least. Maybe in other parts of the world, Christians have, a difficult time being Christians because they don't have the freedom of religion like we have in this country.
Do you think God wants us to practice religion?
I don't think He wants us to practice religion. I think He wants us to have a relationship with Him. And those are two different things.
Do you think priests should be allowed to get married?
Yeah. As long as they're still doing their job as priests, I don't see why they shouldn't be allowed to have a family outside of the
Do
church.
you think that all the stories in the Bible are true?
Yeah. Because the writers of the Bible were all inspired by God.
Do you think going to church affects building a relationship with God?
Yes. Because when you go to church, you're not only learning about God, but you're in His, the house of God. Like you're in church and you're with Him there.
Stop.
The three things that I learned from the interviews was that everyone had their own opinion or answer to each of the questions. It wasn't just a basic answer like yes or no. They went into detail and described why they had an opinion for that answer. The second thing was that I learned from this experience. I learned that about the priests and I learned about the church. Like, I didn't know you could ask those questions. I've always wondered them, like why couldn't priests get married or this or that, but now I know that I can actually ask those questions. The third thing that I learned from this experience, or the questions, was that everyone has a different religion. So each religion has a different answer or input on some of the questions asked. Like if you're Jewish, you have a different answer. If you're Catholic, you have a different answer. So I thought that was something I should add. Some of the similarities and differences in the interview were that most people don't believe that all the stories in the Bible are true, while I, on the other hand, do believe that. And versus another answer would be like, oh, do you think we should go to church more often? Obviously, most people are going to say yes. So those are just some of the similarities and differences that I noticed. Things that surprised me, again, were the answers. Those surprised me the most. Like some people said, oh, they exaggerated the stories in the Bible. But of course, I don't believe that, so I can't really say my input because I obviously believe they don't. I believe that everything in the Bible is set in stone, and yeah, pretty much. Another thing that surprised me was just the way people like said the answers. Like most people would be like, "Oh no, it's like this," or some people be like, "Yes, it's like this." Those are just some of the things that I noticed during the interviews.
So 3 things I learned from this project. Well, people have a very varying opinion when it comes to different topics that we given them. A lot of people believe that priests should be allowed to be married, which is not with the Catholic Church. I also learned that a lot of people that we were around didn't actually grow up being Catholic. Especially in the first video, I learned that was a thing, and like she's learning to be Catholic now, and it's quite interesting. And the last thing I learned was that people don't believe in the stories as much as I thought they would for 100% truth. It's quite interesting, because I thought like I was the only one, and I don't know. So similarities and differences, it seemed like a lot of people didn't believe that all the stories were exactly true. Another thing is that they believed that priests should be married. That was a big similarity. I mean, it was huge. For a huge difference, I would say that not everyone had the same response of if it's hard to be a Catholic. I mean, there was one, I think the family member said that she thought everyone's pretty accepting, and then the first one said it's pretty hard for some people, and it was very different. I think the one thing that really blew me away from this, the one thing that like amazed me, I think was the fact that the family member said that it was easy to be a Catholic now because people are more accepting, and I don't know, it just shocked me because I didn't think that answer would come out, because I would think most people today aren't as accepting as they were in some places, because America is a place of very diverse ideas. So I mean, I don't know, in my opinion, a lot of people, these small groups, it's like it's hard to be in these giant groups because people always have their opinions, they're always very judgmental. So it really shocked me that answer came out. With that being said, that concludes the individual portion of my thing. I answered everything, the 3 things I learned, the two similarities and differences, and the one thing that really amazed me. This is the church local project, and yep.
After watching the interviews, I was surprised at all the answers. Some of them I knew what they were going to say, and some of them I didn't. But I think that after watching them all, many people have different beliefs on what they think God wants us to do and what they think is true. For example, like, why do we go to church, and why do we like focus on God and everything? Some people think it's hard to pay attention in church, and they think that going to church is gonna help their relationship with God, and other people don't think that's gonna help our relationship with God. They think that maybe if you pray more, it will help you like get closer to heaven and get into heaven. I also believe the same. I think that not always going to church is really gonna affect your relationship with God. It's difficult, like, because I don't agree with like you have to go to confession after you haven't gone to church. I think that if we try to make it to church, like, we should try, but if we can't go, then we shouldn't be punished for it. I think we should have like a second chance and just go when we can go, because we still believe in God. The similarities and differences between some of the interview responses. So I had the same like responses as some people. Should a priest get married? I think that they should, because if they're supposed to love God and the church, then they should be allowed to love someone else. Other people said that the stories in the Bible are true, but I really don't think that's absolutely true, because I think some of them are exaggerated just to teach us a lesson, because that was God's plan for us. He just wanted to teach us a lesson and give us the ground rules of it. I also think, the
the interview responses that surprised me the most was some people talked about how their faith in God wasn't strong in the beginning, but then it got stronger. Brought up as a Catholic, my faith in God has always been pretty strong, and I always went to church every Sunday, but I haven't been so pushed to it now, so I don't go as often, but I don't think that's affected my relationship with God. But other people may see a difference when they are like further away from God, if they don't practice everything and they don't pray every night, and if they don't do everything that they think in their mind they're supposed to do, or else God won't love them. I think it's important to know that God will always love us no matter what, because we're his children and we're his children of God. And that's it. Yeah.
3 things that I learned. The fact that some people's answers, even though they were variations of each other, I think that they still had the same like ground moral belief. The fact that I think we all interpret God and his religion very differently, so I think that made us have very different viewpoints on different responses, and the fact that some people are more carefree about things than others would, like with the priest getting married, I think everyone was pretty much okay with it. I think some of the similarities is that I think most of the people said that the book, even though it was made so many years ago, that there was some exaggeration, but the truth was still there. The fact that priests would be allowed to get married, I think everyone's okay with it as long as they're still doing their job. The fact that they don't want anyone to use religion as a harmful thing, that they just want everyone to use it very peacefully. I think for that, I think we all just very much had the very same core beliefs, but when it came to going to church, I feel like some people were more lenient than others. Like, some people thought that you didn't really need to go to church in order to have a relationship, because going to church doesn't necessarily mean you have one, which differed from person to person. The interview response was my mom's, who said that going to church and having a relationship with God is 2 very different things, especially since we go to church all the time. I wasn't expecting her to say that, but looking back at hindsight, it does make sense, because even though her relationship with God's very strong, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's just because she goes to church. Like, church helps, but it doesn't define a relationship.